Story time about how my best friend got my house raided. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade, and we're going to call my best friend Jenna. Jenna and I have been on and off friends since elementary school. Now, the reason why we were on and off friends was because Jenna was the type of person who ended up in drama all the time. And coincidentally, anytime that I would stop being her friend, I would be in no drama. Now, there have been multiple times where I've tried to break off our friendship for good, but Jenna, of course, was the type of girl who would threaten to unalive herself whenever things didn't go her way. And I low-key have a savior complex. Also, I literally lived right across the street from her. So it was very hard to cut this friendship off. Well, anyways, fast forward, so her and I are friends, which also wasn't good because she was a very bad influence on me. For example, I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a car. So of course I would go pick her up and her and I would fuck shit up together, aka do bad things. Well, the one night I let her drive and she ended up going to my ex-boyfriend's house, like for part 2 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, no license, but I had a car and I let her drive that night. And she went to my ex-boyfriend's house. Now, her and him used to be close whenever him and I were dating. And I didn't think anything of it until she called him and she kept telling him to come outside of his house so we could fight him. And I'm telling her to stop, but she just keeps laughing the whole time and she always does shit like this. And I was tired of being pulled into shit like this because then I got named the psycho stalker girl. So then I find out that after she went home that night, she texted my ex with this whole elaborate story about how I was the one who made her drive to his house and say all that shit. So fast forward, her and I got into it at school because I told a counselor that she was threatening to unalive herself because I was really worried for her. But then she starts posting stuff about my mental health on social media, saying things like, oh, she has zebra stripe arms. And I fought her after that. Because the only reason why I told our counselor is because I gave a shit about her mental health, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, she posted stuff online about my mental health, and then her and I, we ended up fighting at school, and her mom decided to press charges. But then I ended up showing the cops everything that she had said to me online and all the bullying that she was doing, and how she would literally blackmail me into being friends with her. And this made Jenna and Jenna's mom super unhappy, so they ended up filing a false report about me to the police, saying that I have illegal stuff in my house, and I do this, and I do that, and I plan on unaliving my mom. Like, what the So in the middle of the night, my whole family and I are woken up by this loud banging on our front door. So my mom, hurry up, go open the door, and they're saying that they have a warrant, and come to find out, the only thing that they could find were a bunch of empty vapes, which my mom was not happy about. And yeah, my mom and I's relationship is super rocky sometimes, but I would never try to unalive her. Storytime about how this girl pretended to be my best friend just to go on vacation with me. So a little background information, I was 14 and a freshman in high school, and we're going to call this girl Sophia. Sophia and I met whenever we were in 6th grade, and we were inseparable. And shortly after her and I had became best friends, my mom thought that it would be nice for us to go on vacation to Hawaii in 2 years. She also said that my brother and I would be able to bring one friend each. So I asked Sophia if she wanted to come to Hawaii in 2 years, and of course she said yes. Keep in mind, I was popular, Sophia was kind of lame, and I'm not even saying that just to be mean, but it's true. So over the next 2 years, her and I are hanging out every day, sneaking out together because we also live like 2 minutes away from each other. And my brother decided that he was going to bring his friend Noah, and I had a crush on Noah, and Sophia knew this, but she would always flirt with him in front of me. I really should have saw this as a red flag, but you know, we love to ignore those. And then out of nowhere, Sophia starts dressing like me and starts getting more popular in school. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how this girl pretended to be my best friend just to go on vacation with me. So like I said, she had been flirting with this guy that she knew that I liked, and then she starts dressing like me and getting more popular, which I didn't really care because I was still her best friend. Mainly because she didn't really have any other friends. So fast forward, vacation comes around and we all go to Hawaii. We had the best time ever. And then we come home and I barely hear from her. Like, I was putting in all the effort, texting her every day, and her responses were dry as fuck. And then she had this boyfriend named Brendan, which I guess that could have been the reason why she wasn't talking to me as much. Because, you know, you get into a relationship and all of your focus goes towards that, especially at this age. But the only reason why she started dating him was because he was popular. So they break up and she stopped talking to me altogether. She even blocked me on Instagram. So I asked her what happened and she said that I was a controlling bitch and she didn't want to be friends with me, which doesn't even make any sense because I've never been controlling to her. And then she starts texting me like everything was okay, and this went on for a little bit. But after a few months, I just stopped talking to her, but I definitely felt used. Story time about my toxic foster family. So, little background information. Whenever this all happened, I was 19 years old and I was already out of school. But I had been adopted by a family whenever I was 16 years old. And at this point, they had been fostering my brother for about a year. So the only things that they knew about me is whatever my brother told them. Whenever I was 17, my sister ended up passing away, and I went into a really deep depression where I would wake up and go to sleep crying for months on end. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty neglected. Like, my family would get $800 to $1,000 every month for me, and I never saw a dime of that money, let alone we would only go shopping probably once a year for clothes. And I never really got to go out. Well, when I went to them about being depressed, they said that if I didn't feel okay after vacation, they would get me help. Well, they lied because it got worse and they didn't really care. Everybody was getting paid to do chores except for me, and I literally had so much more to do than everybody else in the house. And then I got a boyfriend, like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic foster family. So like I said, everybody else in the house really had no chores to do, and they would get paid for whatever the hell they did, even if it was like pick up a dime off the floor. Meanwhile, I was like Cinderella, cleaning the whole house, not getting paid for shit, and then I get a boyfriend who was super caring and acknowledged the fact that I was super emotionally and physically beat down. And the worst part is, I just want to throw this in here, my biological brother was literally no help. When I came to him saying that I was depressed, he was like, oh, you're too sensitive. And then he would literally stalk me 24/7, always knew where I was at, always was making my life even harder than it had to be. So the one morning I got up and I just decided to leave. And then after that, for 1 year straight, I got harassed with emails. I would get tailgated on the freeway. And even though I got away from them, I'm still kind of scared that my biological brother will do something. So yeah.
Story time about how I caught my teachers doing the nasty in the girls' bathroom. So a little background information. I was 14 years old and in 9th grade, and we're just gonna get straight into it. So the one day while I was at school, I asked my teacher if I could go to the bathroom, and as I'm walking up towards the bathroom, you know how school bathrooms or any public bathroom in general, like it echoes? Yeah, well, as I got closer to the bathroom, I hear quiet grunting and heavy breathing. But of course, I thought that someone was just going number 2, okay? I did not think anything of this because duh, what else would be happening in a school bathroom? Anyway, so like I said, I walk in not thinking anything of this, and then bam, I see my history and biology teacher doing it in the open stall. The open stall. Like, come on guys, it is bad enough. Y'all are doing this in a public bathroom on school property where there are hundreds of minors walking around, but in the open stall, y'all need to have some class. So obviously when I see them, I like gasp. I'm like, oh, because walking into a school bathroom, that is not what I expect to see, nor do I want to see that. So then Mr. C hurries up, holds his pants up, and then just sits on the toilet. And then my bio teacher, Miss Annabelle, she turns like bright red and she's trying to cover herself, her whole body with her hands, like girly pop. We already established that this is very immoral / disgusting / downright foul as but you really just have to take all of your clothes off. All of them. Not only that, but Miss Annabelle over here is married. Like, girl, shame on you. Anyway, so for some reason, the first thing that I thought to say was, I'm gonna tell your husband, even though I knew I wasn't gonna do shit. But it's literally the only thing that I could think to say in this moment. Well then, Mr. C jumps off the damn toilet, and you guys will never guess what his first thought to do is. Is it to try to de-escalate the situation? No. Is it to try to bribe me? No. Guess again. Run? Never mind, I'm just gonna fucking tell you. He turns to her and starts crying. Not about the fact that his ass was about to be fired. No. Instead, he's like, do you love me?
Be fucking for real.
She did not seem to give a fuck about him, which go off sis, because you need to be more worried about how you're gonna pay them bills without a job. Anyway, so yeah, you know, she's hurrying up, putting her clothes on, he's crying, and then finally they both direct their attention towards me, and then they corner me and start threatening me. They're like, if you tell anybody about this, we're gonna make sure that we make the rest of your high school experience a living hell, blah, 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 this, that, and the next. Like, okay, fight for the bag. But at the same time, y'all keep digging yourselves a deeper grave. I mean, shit, like, you do you, but at the same time, like, girl and sir, get it together. Anyway, so as a freshman, like, I'm scared as like, I didn't know what that meant, and I was not about to find out. So obviously I tell them what they want to hear, and then finally they leave, and my crybaby ass starts having a fucking panic attack. Okay, actually though, like, I'm not a crybaby. I was just threatened by 2 grown-ass adults. Also, I wasn't even sure if anybody would believe me. But then I did remember that this is school and there are cameras everywhere because duh, it's the 21st century and we have weirdos and psychos out here doing shit they're not supposed to do. Cough, cough, Miss Annabelle and Mr. C. Anyway, so I'm crying the whole walk back to class, and when I walked in, the teacher ran over and she's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? What happened? And then I asked her if we could talk outside because I did not want to say what I just saw in front of the whole class. Also, I was low-key hesitant to tell anybody because Miss Annabelle had 3 kids and a husband, so I didn't want to rip her family apart. But then again, I decided not to give a because sis should have thought about them kids before she chose to pick over them. Yeah, anyways. So then after I tell her, she immediately gets a teacher to cover the class and she takes me to the guidance office. Could y'all imagine if this teacher was friends with those other teachers? Like, I wonder if this teacher still would have told anybody else what happened. Cause you know how like you want to save your friends sometimes, you know, Captain Save-A-Ho type shit. Anyway, so they called both of them down and I had to tell the whole situation again in front of them. Thankfully, security stood next to me because I was scared shitless from the threats that they made towards me. Well, baby, the cameras do not lie. They were caught in 4K doing shit they weren't supposed to be doing. After this, both of them were fired and my parents decided to take me out of that school because they were not very thrilled at the fact that I was threatened by 2 teachers.
Story time. Is blood really thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So a little background information. I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade. And I had just started dating this guy that my friends introduced me to. He was extremely attractive, really smart, and really kind. Literally had all the traits a girl could want in a boyfriend. So him and I are talking for a while and then we start dating and we were amazing together. And my sister had just came back home from teaching in Thailand. Surprisingly, her and I got super close because we always used to fight with each other. And now we were inseparable. The only issue was she was 25 years old acting like a child. She always wanted to be at my boyfriend's house with him and his family. Weird, I know. Anyway, so she was always over there with them and I thought that maybe she was just lonely. Wrong, of course. Now, of course, like any other relationship, mine wasn't perfect, but my boyfriend and I started having more problems than usual when my sister showed up. He was being super weird and all the signs pointed to him cheating on me. Like for part 2. Part 2, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, my sister started spending more time at my boyfriend's house. I thought that she was lonely, but then my boyfriend started acting weird and all the signs pointing to him cheating on me. But I ignored it because I thought that him and I were in love like in the movies. And also if I broke up with him, it would be like breaking up with his family because I loved them like my own. Fast forward, his sister ends up getting married and my sister and I were invited to the wedding. Fast forward, everybody gets drunk. We end up spending the night at his cousin's house and something was off with my boyfriend. He wasn't really talking to me. He wouldn't touch me. He pretty much acted like he was done with me. Well, then there's my sister who was flirting and touching him like it was normal. Fast forward a month, I asked my sister if anything happened between them and she goes, I think we slept together. So I confronted him about it and he just laughs and he's like, it wasn't that serious. So I end up breaking up with him and then I start finding unhealthy ways to cope, aka drinking. And eventually I got so lonely to the point where I forgave my sister. And then I started seeing this other guy and he was amazing. Like for part 3. Part 3, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, I forgave my sister and then I got a new guy. He was amazing. And then my sister started begging to hang out with us. Now, of course, you would have thought that I learned from the first time, but I did not. I just completely ignored the signs that God gave me that she was a bad person. Okay, I guess not a bad person, she just didn't give a fuck about my feelings. Well, the one weekend his parents went away and they needed him to house sit, so he invited me over to house sit with him, and then guess who tags along? My sister. I mean, I guess I could have told her that she couldn't come, but at the same time, I was trying to be a forgiving person, okay? And I thought that she wouldn't do this shit to me again. Well, I was wrong because on the last night of house sitting, we all decided that we were gonna get drunk, and my sister made sure that I got more effed up than everybody else. I ended up actually getting alcohol poisoning and I almost died, but she didn't care. She was too focused on sleeping with the new guy. The worst part of this is they started dating and my mom was on her side. It's been 3 years and I'm still trying to forgive her and my
Story time about how my boyfriend cheated on me and the girl tried to get her cousin to fight me. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 9th grade, and one of my friends had sent me a picture of my boyfriend, who we are going to call Julio, with another girl. And my boyfriend and I are neighbors, so I told him to meet me outside. I confronted him and I was like, why are people sending me this picture of you with another girl? Like, are you cheating on me or something? Now, let me tell y'all something, okay? Never ask somebody to their face if they are cheating on you. Never. Now, if you have physical evidence, like proof of them cheating, yeah, ask them to see if they'll lie about it, duh. Like, we all have to do that. But if you do not have physical proof, do not ask them if they are cheating on you. Stupid. Like, the whole entire reason that they are cheating on you is because they want to eat their cake and have it too. Anyways, so I confront him, and just like any other person, he has a long list of excuses. He's like, oh my gosh, absolutely not. That girl is crazy. That picture's from a long time ago when her and I were dating.
Hey, that's pretty good.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, that is actually one of the smarter excuses I've heard, because at that point you're gonna be like, oh, okay, they used to be in a relationship. You're not gonna ask her. Like, that's weird, at least to me. I don't want anything to do with anybody's ex-girlfriends.
Fuck no, and I'ma stand on that.
Anyway, so fast forward a few months, I decided to send that girl a friend request on Facebook, and she accepts it, and then she posts a story tagging who? My boyfriend. So then I kindly ask her if she's dating him, and then she goes, that's none of your fucking business. So me, on the other hand, you know, still trying to be the calm one because there's no reason to be hasty about the situation. I tell her that him and I have been dating and that I think he's cheating on me with her. Her and I get into a very heated argument when, like, girly, the whole point of this was not to argue. I just want to know if my man is cheating on me with you. Like, I hate when the side pieces get an attitude. Like, girl, the chances are after I find out that he's cheating on me with you, you can just have him. Because I am not a f***ing raccoon and I do not dig out the f***ing garbage, and he is garbage. Absolutely not. Anyway, so after a few hours, I end up calling my man, who was low-key never even my man in the first place, and I kicked his ass to the curb. And he got mad that I messaged this girl. You know what I hate even more than the side piece getting mad whenever you confront them? When your boyfriend gets mad at you for catching him cheating. Like, yes, baby, I went through your phone, texted that girl. Like, cry about it to the side, not me, because I do not have time to deal with that. The next day, a girl shows up at my ex house, so I'm getting super nervous that this girl's gonna try to come to my house and start something with me. Well, fast forward to the next day, my best friend comes over to my house, and there was a car sitting in the middle of the road, very close to my house. And my best friend kept telling me that we needed to leave, but you know, my dumbass was like, no, we're not going anywhere, blah, 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 blah. It's nothing. Well, it was something, because the girl who went over to my ex's house pulled up on us, and she got out of the car and tried to fight me. And yeah, it turns out that that girl was the cousin of the girl that he was cheating on me with. Look at him, classy, keeping it in the family. Go off, sis. The girl that he was cheating on me with finally snapped out of her delusion because she found out that she was getting cheated on by my ex with her cousin. Her and I talk, and she's like, listen, if she tries to pull up on you again, let me know and I'll come and I'll beat her ass. Well, fast forward, that girl ended up having a baby at 16 or 17, and I don't know if it's his or not, because after a few weeks she stopped coming around. And the girl that I originally had beef with, well, actually, let me rephrase that. The girl who originally had beef with me started dating my ex again. Him and I haven't talked since that day, but when he sees me, he literally always stares at me. And he sees me like every day, duh, because we're neighbors. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm still in love with him, but that is the way life goes.
Story time about how I came out to my homophobic parents. So a little background information, I was 14 or 15 and I was a freshman in high school. And all throughout middle school, I had been questioning my sexuality because I didn't really know what I was into, as do most kids my age. Well, due to this, I was bullied in school because people would always ask me, oh, do you like boys or girls? And when I would say that I don't know, they would call me slurs. So anytime that I got into a relationship, I would keep it a secret, and the only person that knew was my best friend. But the summer before my freshman year, I got together with my current boyfriend, and we're gonna call him Andrew. Andrew and I met through Snapchat through a mutual friend. We started FaceTiming all the time, and we found out that we lived in the same area, so we started hanging out all the time as well. Well, eventually him and I started dating, and after about 3 or 4 weeks, We took our relationship a little bit further, and his parents knew that he was gay and that we were in a relationship. But my parents, on the other hand, did not know. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I came out to my very homophobic parents. So, like I said before, my boyfriend and I had decided to take our relationship a step further, and his parents knew that he was gay and that him and I were in a relationship. But my parents, on the other hand, did not know. They just thought that him and I were best friends that hung out every single day. But yeah, my parents think that doing the nasty before marriage is a sin, being gay is a sin. Pretty much doing anything is a sin. So the one day I was in my room watching RuPaul's Drag Race. By the way, I don't know if I pronounced that right. And then my mom walks in and she says, I don't want you watching these men in wigs and heels, acting like females, blah, blah, blah. That's a sin. Like, Mom, go get a fucking life. Thanks. And then she says, if I find out you're a part of this, you're going to need God and Jesus to protect you from me. So my boyfriend and I are in complete shock. Well, then I finally decided that I was going to grow some balls and tell my mom that I was a part of that community. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how I came out to my super homophobic parents. So, like I said, my mom was like, if you're a part of this community, you're going to need God and Jesus to protect you from me. And I was really upset. I started crying, and my boyfriend, he's like comforting me. I finally decided to grow some balls and tell her that I was, in fact, a part of the community. Well, I ended up getting my ass beat. They also told me that they were going to take me to a priest to get an exorcism. So I basically moved out of my parents' house, and I moved into my uncle's house, who is a part of the LGBTQ community. And he's in full support of my boyfriend and I's relationship. I blocked both of my parents and I haven't talked to them ever since I moved out. Well, that's a lie. The only time that I did talk to them was to wish them a happy Mother's Day and happy Father's Day. But other than that, I decided that I want to be happy, and to be happy, I had to keep them out of my life. Story time about how my best friend was a snake. So a little background information. I was 15 and in 9th grade. And I've been best friends with this girl who we're going to call Kaylee since 5th grade. Well, fast forward to 8th grade, there was this guy in my class that I really liked. And obviously I told Kaylee about it because, like, duh, she is my best friend. And she has never talked to this boy. She never even knew who he was before I had told her about him. And by the way, we're gonna call him Jake. Well, eventually him and I started talking, and she was hyping us up. Like, she really wanted us to be together so bad. And I was really feeling the love and support. Well, not long after that, I had to move to another town for like 3 months because of my dad. So Jake and I, we stopped talking after me being gone for like 2 weeks. And of course, not long after that, one of my friends from home texted me, and she's like, hey, you know Kaylee and that guy that you were talking to, right? AKA Jake. Obviously, I say yes. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend was a snake. So like I said, I had to move away for 3 months because of my dad, and Jake and I, we stopped talking about 2 weeks after I had left. And then I get a text from my friend saying, hey, you know Kaylee and that guy that you were talking to, Jake? Obviously, I say yes. And then she goes, oh, well, they're talking about getting together. And I was livid. I'm like, dude, I've literally been gone for like less than a month, and you're already trying to get with the guy that I like. What the actual you know what? So I bawled my eyes out for like 2 hours straight. And then I decide that I'm going to confront her. And she literally says to me, like, she has the audacity to say that she's been in love with him for so long, even before I had told her about him. Which is a lie, because as I told you guys earlier, she didn't know this man. Well, anyways, Jake ended up friend-zoning her, and she didn't even really apologize to me. She said sorry, but, like, she didn't acknowledge the importance of the situation and how it made me feel. She just thought that saying sorry would make it all better. Storytime about how I found out that my best friend screwed my boyfriend. So a little background information. This happened whenever I was between 16 and 21 years old, and I was a sophomore in high school. During the summer, just before school started, my boyfriend Ryan moved to town. But sadly, whenever he moved here, his mom passed away, so he ended up missing the first 2 weeks of school. Fast forward, Ryan comes to school, and he ends up becoming best friends with my guy best friend, and him and I had a bunch of classes together, so we would talk all the time. Obviously, this led to me having a crush on him. So him and I end up dating, and that's whenever we switched lunch tables to sit with my other friends. And then fast forward about 2 months into Ryan and I's relationship, my ex came to my house the one night, and he SA'd me. The next day, I told my boyfriend what happened, and he agreed that it wasn't my fault, but he said he would need some time to get over it. Fast forward, we end up moving on, and we did the nasty a few times. And And then my best friend Maddie told me the only reason why he did nasty with me was because he felt like I was more experienced than him. So I ended up breaking up with him because I felt like he deserved better than me. He ended up never speaking to me, but later on I heard a rumor that somebody saw Ryan and Maddie together. So I confronted her about it, and she told me that she was just comforting him after what I did to him. Isn't it funny how there are those friends who go to comfort your ex during the breakup instead of you? A little sus if you ask me. Fast forward 5 years later, he comes into the place that I work, and my work best friend Ashley gives my number to his friend to give to Ryan. So I texted him that night, and then I woke up the next morning to a text that says, "Who is this?" And then over that weekend, we ended up like reconnecting. Then a month later, I got kicked out of my house and I moved in with him. And plot twist, so 8 months later, one thing led to another. He proposed to me. And then 5 months later, we also ended up moving into a bigger apartment. Well, I ended up buying him a new phone, and that is whenever I saw text messages between him and Maddie. And they weren't just messages. These messages were very spicy. Also, this is while she was in a relationship with a freshman while we were seniors. I forgave him for lying because obviously we weren't in a relationship, but it's pretty effed up that that was my best friend. And obviously Maddie and I are not friends anymore.
Storytime about how I got away with sleeping with my best friend's brother without her knowing. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade, and we're going to call my best friend's brother Jake. Now, I've always felt like I had a connection with Jake, but I didn't know what kind of connection, so I just ignored it. But I was super close with their mom, and I kind of thought of her as my own. And I would always be over their house because my parents were always fighting, so I knew exactly where they hid their spare key. Anyways, so this night my parents have been fighting and I was texting with Jake, and Jake was like, "Oh, well, you should just come over and we'll hang out." And I said no because I didn't want to upset my best friend. But him and I were still texting throughout the night, and I finally decided to go over their house. I ended up falling asleep in my best friend's room, and then fast forward, I wake up at 3 a.m. So I go to the bathroom, and what are the chances her brother is in there? As he walks out, I walk in, and somehow we both ended up in the bathroom together, and we did the nasty. After that, I went back to bed, and nobody ever found out.
Storytime about how my fiance cheated on me with 10 other girls. So a little background information, I met this guy on Instagram, and we're gonna call him Bryce. Now, when him and I met, he was stationed in Korea, and he refused to ask me to be his girlfriend until he came home. So I waited an entire year for him to ask me to be his girlfriend, which low-key should have been a red flag, but he made it seem romantic in some twisted, weird way. So fast forward, he comes home in February, and he kept to his promise. The first day that we met, he asked me to be his girlfriend. So I say yes. Fast forward, him and I start having a ton of arguments because of things that he was doing while he was in Korea. Fast forward, we're officially together for 9 months. So fast forward, of course, he gets deployed to Europe in like September of 2022. So this man decides that he's going to propose to me in July and then beg me to get married to him before he leaves. Now, I may have ignored the first red flags, but I'm not dumb. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with 10 other girls. So like I said, this man begs me to get married to him before he leaves, and thank goodness I didn't because divorce papers would have been served the same day. So fast forward, he starts acting super weird. He's going out 24/7. He's getting drunk. He's not wearing the ring that he begged me to get him. Yes, he literally begged me for a ring so that way women would know that he had a girlfriend. Well, then of course I get a DM from a girl on Instagram asking if him and I were still together. And then after talking to her, I realized he literally made a Tinder 2 days after he got deployed. And what was his excuse? Oh, I wanted to meet friends to teach me German. And listen, I was not born last night, so I kept that conversation going because I wanted to get to the bottom of what the fuck was actually going on. And then, of course, he finally comes clean that he cheated on me with a bunch of girls. Oh, and you want to know the icing on the cake? One of them was a minor. Yup. After I leave him, he has the audacity to ask for my ring back, but I threatened to tell
Storytime about how this guy was cheating on his girlfriend with me. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade. And one day one of my friends, Josh, decided to expose this kid named Caden. Because this guy, Caden, posted on his Snapchat story, anybody who's 14 and younger, unadd me. I find it so weird that you little girls are swiping up on my stories calling me cute. So my best friend Josh decides to expose this man, and he's like, weren't you just hanging out with a 12-year-old the other day? Make it make sense. So, you know, I only add Caden because I was going to tell him that he's gross and disgusting for hanging out with 12-year-olds. But after he sent me a picture of his face saying hi, yeah, I immediately fell in love with this man. I know this looks bad. Trust me.
Anyways, when I started talking to this kid, I really thought that he was on some fuckboy type shit. He was actually super sweet and really kind.
Bruh.
Like, he never asked me for nudes or anything. He also told me that he was single, so him and I started flirting. And y'all, I really thought that this man was about to be my husband. Now, of course, I low-key doubted him a little bit, so I ended up taking screenshots of every one of our messages. Well, him and I had never actually met in person, but we did have plans to meet up that weekend. So a few days before him and I are supposed to meet up, all of a sudden he literally went ghost. I didn't hear from him all day, and then when I go to Snapchat him, bro has me blocked on almost everything. He had me blocked on Instagram as well, but he had 2 accounts on Instagram and he forgot to block me on the one. And Instagram really snitched on this man, because when I clicked on his Instagram, it had the suggested accounts. Some girl with a profile picture of him and her popped up. And she had their date in her bio. They have been dating for a whole fucking year.
Don't be shocked. You're shocked? You're shocked?
So obviously I'm gonna tell her that her man was cheating on her, but whenever I add her on Snapchat, she immediately sends me a message that says, if this is about Caden, I don't want to hear it. So instead of talking to her about Caden, I literally just sent her all of the screenshots from these past 2 weeks that him and I have been talking. The only thing I said after that was, he's been cheating on you with me. But then she literally just responds with a video of them, and she's like, okay, thank you. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I personally wouldn't stay with him, but to each their own. Anyways, so fast forward, they're still together, and I'm still blocked on everything. Story time about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So a little background information, I was living with my dad and I had just started a new school, and I became really good friends with this group of kids. And in our friend group, there was this boy who we're gonna call Alex, and him and I hit it off like right away. We had been talking for 2 months. And by the way, during this whole time, his friends were telling me how much he loved me and how much he wanted to be with me. So eventually him and I started dating. And of course, like any other tragic love story, I had to move far away because I had to go live with my mom, blah, 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 blah. But since I would visit my dad for the holidays, him and I would still be able to see each other sometimes, which is pretty good for a long distance relationship, especially when you're in school. So I told him about how I had to move. And he was really sad, but he said that I can trust him. Red flag number 1, because why would you say that in the first place? There should be no reason on why I have to, quote, trust you to be loyal when I'm away. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So like I said, I told him that we were going to have to do long distance, and he was sad, but then he said that he could trust me. And like I said before, why the hell would I have to trust you? Because you should just be loyal in general, duh. So I'm like, hey, I want to spend time with you before I leave. Can we hang out? And he was like, oh, sorry, I have plans, but we can hang out later tonight. So I was like, okay, whatever. And a few hours go by. I never get a text from him or a call, nothing. So I text him and he's like, sorry, I forgot. So I'm really sad right now, but I forgave him. Quick note here, ladies, if he wanted to, he would. He would have canceled his plans if he really wanted to see you. Anyway, so I move and fast forward 2 to 3 weeks. And Alex and I literally have only been texting, no calls, nothing like that. So I'm talking to one of his friends, and one of his friends tells me that he's been talking to this other girl, and he's been telling everybody that he's been wanting to break up with me for weeks because he wants to date her instead, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So like I said, I was talking to his friend, and his friend said that he's been talking to this girl for 2 to 3 weeks about the time that I've been gone. And he's been telling everybody about how he wants to break up with me for her. So of course I'm sad and crying, and I confront him, and he says, oh, she's just a friend, blah, blah, blah. So I press the issue, and then he tells me that he lost feelings for me weeks ago. And that the reason why he didn't tell me was because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. Yet he led me on for 2 to 3 weeks. Like, how does that work, Alex? How? Anyway, so I blocked him because there's no way in hell that I'm going to keep talking to a guy that was making fun of me with his friends and telling everybody around him that he wanted to break up with me. That's embarrassing.
Story time about why you should be careful about who you go on vacation with. So a little background information, I was 18 years old and a senior in high school, and I had planned to go on a vacation to Barcelona in Europe with my best friend Kayla and this other girl Megan. Now we didn't know Megan too well, but we were still friends with her. But I'm not gonna lie, the red flags started before we even left to go to Barcelona. Because as we were booking this trip, Kayla and I wanted to keep a smaller budget because we were going to be leaving for college when we got back.
But Megan was not having it at all. She wanted to spend what seemed like every single last penny on this trip. But thankfully, we ended up compromising on a cheap Airbnb in the middle of Budapest. Well, fast forward to whenever we all land in Spain. So we go to the bar and we meet these two British guys. One's name was Will, and he was hanging around with Kayla and I. Then the other one, who we're gonna call Harry, he was chatting it up with Megan. Keep in mind, Megan has a boyfriend. So before we left, guys asked for our Instagram, and Kayla and I said no, they respected it. But Megan, on the other hand, was giving out her socials. Now, initially, we weren't judging her because you can be friends with guys and have a boyfriend. Next night, we decided to hit the clubs again because literally every night there was crazy. We meet these guys. They were super cool, and one's name was Rylan and the other one's name was Ellis. Rylan was hitting on Megan, and Ellis was totally into me, which I didn't mind because he was so cute. And while we're all hanging out, Megan has the audacity to turn to me and be like, oh my god, I would totally do the nasty with Ellis if I didn't have a boyfriend. Meanwhile, she knew that I was interested in him. Anyways, so the rest of the night, Ellis and I basically spent it together. We exchanged socials, and Megan was super drunk, so we ended up going home. And then Megan decides to call her man while she's in the bed with Kayla, and we all sleep in one room so we can hear everything that the other person's doing. And then she starts having phone, you know what, with her man while she's in the bed with Kayla. And she's taking nude pics of herself and sending them while she's in the bed. Kayla felt extremely uncomfortable. Anyways, fast forward to the next day. Ellis and I hang out again, and we ended up kissing at the end of the night. And Megan was blackout drunk again, but this time on the way home, not only had she been flirting with so many guys, but she was trying to get with Ellis right in front of me. We ended up going to their apartments afterward, and literally, Megan invites him into bed with her. He didn't get into bed with her, but I was so pissed off. Like, you have a boyfriend, and also you're trying to steal some guy that you know that I like. Kayla and I were furious, so we just decided to go and walk home. Fast forward the next day, Megan wakes up and she can't remember anything that happened the day before. After this, the vibe was just awful, but Kayla and I tried to ignore it, and I'm pretty sure that Megan had no idea that there was a bad vibe. Like, I'm pretty sure that she thought nothing she did was wrong. Anyway, so we go to this beach party thing, and Megan was in charge of booking the beach party, right? Kayla and I gave her money to book tickets that was unlimited drinking. What did she do? She did not book the unlimited drinking package. She booked the regular one. Anyway, so Megan starts flirting with this 30-year-old man, and that's whenever Kayla and I decide, okay, we're gonna go walk around because we're not staying here for this. Like, this is our vacation too. Anyways, we make our way back over to Megan, and she looks pissed. She was so mad that we weren't staying with her while she talked to this old man, and we were like, we never even let you out of our sight. Like, we were barely 10 feet away from you, but we're sorry. She was like, yeah, it's the least that you can do after your behavior. And I'm like, what the fuck? So then all of us are arguing on the beach, and usually I'm the one who is very feisty, but Kayla went off. I have never seen her like this ever in my life, because Megan thought that she could just go off on us and we were gonna stand there and say nothing. So then she orders a cab, and we offer to get in it with her, but she says no, and we stayed and we had a really good night. Because one, this is our vacation too, and we are nobody's babysitters. We tried to make sure that you were having a good time, and we took care of you while you were blackout drunk, and you were not about to treat us like shit. Moral of the story, know who you're going on vacation with before you go on vacation.
Story time about how my boyfriend was dating me and some other girl at the same time. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and a junior in high school, and we're gonna call my boyfriend Tyler. So Tyler and I met back in middle school, but we were like barely even friends. Well, fast forward to my junior year in high school, he reached out to me, and eventually him and I were talking every single day. So fast forward 3 months, him and I were definitely more than a friendship, because we were doing everything that couples would do just without the label. Well, the one day him and I are hanging out, and we're taking pictures on his Snapchat and sending them to his friends. And then I see that his number one best friend is this girl named Bailey. Now, the reason why I wasn't on his best friends list was because I didn't have Snapchat. But the only reason why this is a problem is because him and his friends Snapchat each other all day. And I'm talking like spam the fuck out of each other. So for her to be at the top of his best friends list, they have to be Snapchatting a lot. So I had asked him if it was this one girl that we both knew, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was dating some other girl and myself at the same time. So like I said, he's clearly been Snapchatting this girl a lot. So then I asked him if it's this Bailey girl that we actually knew, and he was like, no, this is Bailey Moore. That other Bailey is disgusting. Like, okay, what the fuck is so special about this one? Just kidding, not really. So now I'm super annoyed and cannot get this girl out of my head because he didn't even try to explain who she was or why she had any significance in his life at all. So fast forward to spring break. He told me that whenever we got back from vacation, he wanted me to meet his parents, which I was so happy about because our relationship is finally progressing. But then I remember that he's supposed to go to his hometown's prom with some other girl, of course. So I decided to look up this Bailey girl just to see where she's from, and what do you know, she's from his hometown. So fast forward, I ended up getting in trouble for going out and getting drunk, and my parents took my phone away, and then they went through it, and they found out that Tyler and I were doing the nasty, so they grounded me. And they were like, you can tell Tyler that he can text or call us if he wants to talk to you. I didn't get any text the whole entire time that I was grounded. So fast forward a whole week, I finally texted him, like, for part 3.
Okay, so story time about how my girlfriend cheated on me with my best friend. Come on, ladies, it's not supposed to be us. This is unacceptable. Okay, so a little background information. I was 17 and in 9th grade. Now, I also lived on my own because when I came out with my parents, they pretty much just kicked me to the curb whenever I was in 7th grade. But here's the thing, right? My girlfriend and my best friend had a hate-hate relationship. Like, they could not fucking stand each other. So I thought. Anyways, they would fight about who would get to spend time with me on what days. It was ridiculous. I mean, other than that, though, everything was good. Up until there was some very sus activity going on. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. I did low-key feel like my girlfriend was cheating on me because of the very obvious red flags that I just so happened to ignore, per usual. Anyways, sign number 1 should have been the fact that every time she was on her phone, she would make sure that her brightness was all the way down, and she would always kind of, you know, turn it away from me whenever I would, you know, be next to her. Well, now on to my best friend. All of a sudden, she has everybody and their mother trying to make plans for her, and she has no time for me at all. And I'm not gonna lie, you guys can call me dumb for this one.
This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I was over my girlfriend's house the one day, and she has this one sweatshirt that she really likes. I really like it too. So I go to grab it, and it's not there, and I ask her where it is, and she's like, oh, my sister must have took it on vacation with her. So, you know, I'm like, okay, I brush it off. Well, a few days later, I go over to my best friend's house, and she comes and opens the door, and y'all already know, she's wearing the sweatshirt.
Oh my god! Wow!
But, you know, because her and my girlfriend hated each other so much, I believed her when she told me that it was her boyfriend's.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is the part where it kind of seems like I'm intentionally being delusional.
Too damn bad!
So the one day I go over to my girlfriend's house and I look over by her closet and I see this weird looking case on the ground. Now, my best friend would wear fake lashes, okay? And she had a case that she would put them in, and she wrote her initials on the bottom. So I go over there, I grab it, and I'm like, what's this? And she's like, I don't know. And then I'm like, I didn't know you wear lashes. And then she goes, I don't, they're probably yours. Like, girl, I think I would know if these are mine. Anyways, I turn the case over, and what do you know, it is my best friend's initials, but they're super faded. Well, I would say what finally snapped me out of that fucking delusion that I was in was the one day whenever my girlfriend came over to my house, and she had just got done with basketball practice, so she went to go and take a shower. I took it upon myself to go through her phone. Like, I was tired of playing these games with her because girlie was acting sus, and I had to figure out what the was going on. Well, good thing I did, because the shit that I found, whew, when I went through her phone, I saw that her and my best friend had been sexting each other, you know, sending nudes and everything else. So I took screenshots of everything, and I'm just gonna put this out here right now. I am that bitch who's so fucking extra. Like, do not play with me, please do not. So with that being said, you guys want to know what I did? Did I confront them about it? No. Did I send the videos and pictures of them to their parents? No. Instead, I printed out over 100 packets with all of these pictures and text messages, and I stapled them all together very neatly, and then I handed them out to the whole school. And then I gave them to their parents. Because you guys want to be messy, we can be messy.
No, I had to double it.
Obviously, after this, I break up with Ashley. I don't even think I really needed to break up with her at that point. I think that it was already implied that that's what was happening. I haven't seen either of them since that whole situation. Oh, and I also heard that they got into a ton of trouble with their parents. Also, I kind of screwed up Ashley's social life. Not kind of, I did. Because Ashley was one of those people that everybody liked, but I guess not anymore. Karma's a bitch, but I'm worse. So next time you want to play games, play with your mama, not me.
Story time about how one of my best friends started blackmailing me. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and a junior in high school, and my parents are friends with this other married couple who has a son that is around my age. He's 17, about to be 18, and we're going to call him Derek. Well, him and I somehow ended up getting into the same friend group, and he got my number, and him and I started texting a lot. So fast forward, my birthday comes around, and I end up having a party. And some of my cousins were around my age as well, so they were there, and my whole friend group was there, including Derek, of course. Well, surprise, surprise, there were booze and marijuana there, so I ended up getting kind of messed up. And then, as you can guess, Derek and I did the nasty. And surprise again, he had took some pictures and videos of me drinking and stuff. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he sent me a message that literally said for me to send him nude pictures and do stuff for him physically, or else he was going to send these pictures to my parents. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how one of my best friends was blackmailing me. So like I said, he took some pictures and videos of me doing some stuff at my party, and then all of a sudden I get a message out of nowhere saying that I need to send him nude photos and do stuff for him physically, or else he was going to send these pictures to my parents, and the whole school literally blackmailed me. Now, of course, I didn't want my parents to find any of this crap out, so it became a regular thing between him and I, where I would send him pictures and then do stuff for him, and this went on for a while. Fast forward, thankfully, I'm about to graduate, and he doesn't blackmail me anymore since both of us don't want a serious relationship. I don't really know how that makes sense, but yeah.
Story time about how I did the nasty with somebody else's boyfriend. Yup. Anyway, so a little background information. I was 15 years old and in 9th grade. But back in 6th grade, I met this boy who we're gonna call Darren. And you know, back then, him and I had a little crush on each other, but we were too scared to tell each other. So nothing ever came of it. Even though I don't know what would have came of that because we were literally in 6th grade. Maybe a 2-day relationship? Who knows? Anyways, so him and I kept in touch. Obviously, we weren't like besties, but you know, we would catch up here and there, and we would talk to other people as well. Well, fast forward to 7th grade. That was a pretty rough year for me. What happened, you might be asking? Well, I had been deemed the school thought because my new got sent around.
Kim, there's people that are dying.
And now all of these guys only wanted to do the nasty with me. The worst part is like I was still super innocent, right? I only sent them because I really liked this kid. And it was one of those situations where I felt pressured to send them because I didn't want him getting bored of me and then breaking up with me or stop talking to me. Because if I'm not going to send them, somebody else will. So yeah, worst mistake of my life. Anyways, fast forward to January of 2021. Darren puts on his Snapchat, girl best friend with a question mark. You're a okay? Like, just say you want some pussy and get it over with. Anyway, so my lonely, desperate ass swipes up, and now him and I start talking. Now, he did have a girlfriend at the time, but they ended up breaking up, which I'm thinking to myself, thank God, because bitch. I realized that I caught feelings for him real quick. But then a week later, what does he do? He goes and gets a girlfriend. Like, I just really felt like the universe was working against me in every single way possible. Anyway, so him and I continue to talk over the next 2 or 3 months, just not in the way that I was hoping we would be talking, if you know what I mean. But during March, just before my 15th birthday, him and I had hung out at the park, and tell me why this man literally kissed me. And then he says to me, I've been waiting 3 years to do that. Like, oh, okay. Pretty funny that you say that because you've had a girlfriend every other freaking week. But obviously I wasn't thinking this at the time, so yes, him and I made out. And I know y'all are wondering, well, did he have a girlfriend at this time? He did. And yes, I knew it was wrong, but did I care? No. The answer is no. Not really. Now, see, this situation right here is what I would call a they problem, right? Because meaning him and his girl collectively have some things that they need to work on within their relationship. That does not involve me. As far as I'm concerned, I'm perfect. They have the issues, not me. Besides, I wasn't friends with this girl, so I owed her no loyalty. Sorry, babe. Anyways, so fast forward a week after my birthday, I decided to invite Darren over, where my very strict and very, very, very religious family and I lived. But I didn't really care about the rules, so that whole no sex before marriage thing, totally out the window. I did not care. Like, it's the 21st century. That doesn't apply to us. Anyway, so he ended up bringing his friend with him, but Darren and I ended up going in the other room and we did the thing. We did. And then that whole week his friend was hitting me up, so I ended up inviting his friend over that weekend, but his friend and I literally just made out. We didn't do anything else. Well, fast forward a month, Darren came over for the second time. Well, the second and last time. And you know, of course, we do the nasty. And after he left, I was feeling super insecure because I really, 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 really liked him, but he wouldn't leave his girl for me. So me being upset and emotional, what do? I threaten him. I tell him that either he's gonna break up with his girlfriend or I'm gonna tell her everything. And then guess what he did? He blocked me. Yup. And when I say he blocked me on everything. He blocked me on his socials, he blocked me on her socials. Like, he was not playing games with me at all. But it's like, if you love your girl that much, why are you doing shit with me?
I know I be doing some fucked up things. What I do? But you did a fucked up first thing.
That's the real question here. Like, be so for real. But to be honest, I think she found out right away because they broke up literally 2 days later. But fast forward, both of them are super on and off still. And to be honest, I don't really think about him too much anymore because I have a new man and he is literally better than Darren in every single way possible. Even better in bed. Moral of the story, y'all, it is not about the size of the boat, it's about the motion in the ocean. I'm just kidding. That was a quote that was left at the end of this story time. Y'all crack me up.
Story time about how I got catfished by my ex-boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade. And I have been dating this guy who we're going to call Jack since my freshman year in high school. Now the first year of our relationship was absolutely amazing, no complaints. But then fast forward, we get into 10th grade and all of a sudden he changes. Now, Jake had always been a super nice person, but for some reason this year he decided that he wanted to be extra friendly to people, mainly girls. I didn't really think anything of it at the time because he told me he wanted to change up his characteristics, whatever the fuck that means. But the one day I'm in the library and then my friend Chloe walks in and she shows me a video of him rubbing some girl's thigh. And then when I confronted him about it, he was like, babe, she was forcing me to. I promise it'll never happen again. Well, I believed him. But because of this, I started paying way more attention to his actions. I realized he started going out way more and he would always have his location off. Part 2 about how I got catfished by my ex-boyfriend. So like I said, after I confront him about this, he decides that he's gonna flip out on me, victimize himself, of course. So him and I end up breaking up, and then 5 months later, I meet this really cute guy on Snapchat. And you know, him and I are talking for a while, and of course I start to catch feelings. And then bam, him and I start dating. Now, I'm not even going to beat around the bush with this one. I was willing to date anybody because I was lonely. The next day whenever I go to school, Jake keeps smiling at me and tries to talk to me, but I'm ignoring him because what the fuck? Well, over the next 2 days, my new boyfriend starts acting like a total jerk. He starts asking me for nudes 24/7. He never wanted to talk to me. Well, the one day him and I were having a really good day and I decided to send them to him. And then a week later, Jack walks up to me and shows me my pictures. And he's like, if you don't do the nasty with me, I'm posting these everywhere. Now, my parents are super strict and I didn't want them seeing it, so I did it with him. And he ended up posting them everywhere and then telling everybody that we did the nasty. Storytime about falling into a dug-up grave. So a little background information, my dad was a teenager in the late 1950s, and he used to work at this restaurant that was near a local cemetery. Now to get to work, he could either run through the cemetery or go around the cemetery. And more often than not, he would just go through the cemetery because nobody wants to add an extra 10 or 15 minutes to their walk, especially to work. Now being 15 years old, going through the cemetery at night still low-key scared him. So the one night he got off of work and he was running home through the cemetery, and he fell into a dug-up grave. And my dad was not a big guy, so he tried to get out of there as best as he could, but after a few hours, he just gave up. Now, I guess some other kid had the same exact idea that he did. So he hears footsteps quickly approaching the grave, and then all of a sudden, some kid falls into the dug-up grave with him. So after a few minutes of watching this kid try to get out of the grave as well, my dad goes, "You know you're never gonna get out of here, right?" My dad said this kid jumped up 6 feet and ran. Pretty funny story from my dad's point of view, but pretty scary for the other kid. Story time about how I unintentionally almost drowned my sister. So a little background information, I was 8 years old and my sister was 5. And during the summer, my sister and I never really got to go swimming because pool memberships were really expensive and my family did not want to take us to a public pool. So every summer we would go to my grandpa's house so that way we could go swimming. But he lived like 2 hours away, so we would only go there once a summer. And since we only got to go swimming this one time, we would usually be in the pool 24/7. So fast forward, we're all at my grandpa's house, and I finished my dinner first, so I run outside and I put my sister's floaties on because I'm pretty sure that mine actually popped. Now, quick thing, we were allowed to go into the pool without floaties on if we stayed in the shallow end of the pool because we couldn't swim for shit. Anyway, so I put her floaties on and I go to the deep end and she comes outside like a bat out of hell and she starts screaming and crying. And being the big sister I am, I'm just swimming around, ignoring her, enjoying my time in the pool. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I unintentionally almost drowned my sister. Like I said, I have her floaties on, I'm in the deep end of the pool, she's screaming at me, telling me to take them off, I'm ignoring her. And then what does her crazy ass decide to do? She decides to get into the pool and try and get them from me. Now my sister was super tiny. Like even being in the shallow end of the pool, she really couldn't stick her head above the water. Now I'm pretty sure that all swimming pools are like this, but there's a slope that goes into the deep end and it's super slippery. So she comes over to try and get the floaties from me and then she slips. It was literally like a cartoon where the cartoon characters are moving their feet backwards really fast. And I thought that she was just joking around, so I'm just sitting there staring at her until she actually starts choking, and then my dad hurries up and runs outside, thank God. I feel like dads just have superpowers to know whenever their kids are in trouble. Anyway, so he jumps into the pool and he saves her. He ends up spraining his ankle, and I wasn't allowed in the pool for the rest of the weekend. Now, of course, this had me pretty pissed off, but now that I'm an adult, I can...
Story time about how my best friend was stealing from me. A little background information, I was 17 or 18 whenever this all happened, and I was a senior in high school. Now, my family and I had just moved to a new state, and that is where I met my best friend, who we are going to call Grace. Now, Grace and I clicked instantly, but anytime that we would hang out, she would always want to come to my house and never wanted to go to hers. Her excuse was that she had a lot of siblings and her house was super small, there was nothing to do, you know, which I didn't really care. I had no problem with this at all. Until some weird shit started happening in my house. And when I say weird shit, I mean that stuff in my house literally started disappearing. Now at first I wasn't that suspicious because it was just my clothes. And y'all know how things get lost in the laundry sometimes. But then it started to become stuff like my shoes and purses. So, you know, I go and I ask my mom if she's seen any of my clothes or shoes or purses. And she goes and looks through her things to see if anything might be mixed in. But while she's doing that, she's realizing that some of her shit is missing too. So at first we're thinking that it's the cleaning lady, which I feel super bad about. But, you know, before we blame anybody else that, you know, we love and trust and we think would never steal from us, we would think that it would be more logical for somebody who doesn't really know us to steal from us. So we confront her and she denies everything, but just to be sure, we did something to test her and she did not steal our shit. But after this, we're getting a little bit worried that other stuff in the house might be missing, so we go and look and our jewelry is missing as well. So now we only had 2 suspects. First we had my cousin, because she would stay over sometimes, and then we had Grace, which I thought was very unlikely because she was always with me. But nonetheless, I started to be more cautious around her. I would try to be more aware of where and what she was doing while she was in my house. And for a few days, nothing happened. So obviously, after a few times of her coming over, I was 99.9% sure that she wasn't stealing from us. But then, of course, the one night, she must have not realized that I was still awake because she got up to, I'm assuming, go to the bathroom. So I keep pretending to be asleep. And when she walked out of my room, I saw her walk towards the living room. And I decided not to go out there. Instead, I was going to wait until she came back with shit because that would be super awkward if I just went out there and she really could have just been getting some water or something. Well, what do you know? She comes back with some of our shit and she stuffs it in her book bag. So I decide not to confront her. I actually wait till the next day to just tell my mom about it. And that's when she told me that I just wasn't allowed to speak to Grace again or see her. But I wanted my shit back, so I go to her house to surprise her. Her sister ends up answering the door and she lets me in. So, she brings me into the living room and I'm sitting on the couch, and whenever Grace comes into the living room, you all should have saw her. It looked like she's seen a fucking ghost. And then she goes, "Why are you here?" Like, girl, you're not even gonna pretend to be happy to see me after you just stole all my shit? After you just robbed me? How rude of you. No, but I actually told her that I was there to finish a project with her, so she was like, okay, we can do it in the living room. And then I tell her that I need to go to the bathroom, and I go back. I find her room. As soon as I walk in, I see my shit. So I pull my phone out and I record everything. And she walks in her room. I don't even care. I'm literally still recording everything. Like, she's crying and saying, "Oh my goodness, my mom made me steal this stuff because we're low-key down bad right now and we need money, da-da-da-da-da, and she knew y'all were rich." Like, babe, do me a favor. Save the sob story for someone who cares. And okay, just for shits and giggles, let's say that you are struggling. If you're struggling that bad, you would have been sold my shit, because why is everything still in your room? So, I threatened to call the cops on her unless she gives all my shit back, and she didn't want that, so obviously she gave it all back. Well, I did find out a few days later that she was, in fact, trying to sell my stuff, but I don't care. You should have just came to me instead of fucking somebody over who actually cared about you.
Storytime about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So a little background information: I am 19 years old and I'm in college. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 years, and we're gonna call him Josh. The 2 years that we've been dating have been super rocky because he would try to hook up with other girls. Well, no, actually he wouldn't try. He would hook up with other girls. And then, him and I would break up and then we would get back together. Just your usual toxic relationship. The main reason why I kept going back to him was because he was super popular, and this made me feel like I was never going to find anybody better than him, so on and so forth. Now, Josh's brother is 21 years old, and somehow, someway, him and I started hooking up right around after the time I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. Yes, my cousin. I'm saying that like I'm not hooking up with his brother. Anyways. Well, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test, and it came back positive. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So, like I said, my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin, and somehow that led to me hooking up with his younger brother. Well, fast forward, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive, of course. And the first thing that I did was go to Josh's brother, because him and I were hooking up way more than my boyfriend and I were within the past few months. Well, we both came to the conclusion that I should just tell my boyfriend that it's his and see what happens from there. So I told my boyfriend I'm pregnant, and he was super happy, gave me this whole speech about how he's going to be a better boyfriend for me and the baby, which in simpler terms pretty much means
Storytime about how my best friend got my house raided. So a little background information: I was 16 and in 11th grade, and we're going to call my best friend Jenna. Jenna and I have been on and off friends since elementary school. Now, the reason why we were on and off friends was because Jenna was the type of person who ended up in drama all the time. And coincidentally, anytime that I would stop being her friend, I would be in no drama. Now, there have been multiple times where I've tried to break off our friendship for good, but Jenna, of course, was the type of girl who would threaten to unalive herself whenever things didn't go her way. And I low-key have a savior complex. Also, I literally lived right across the street from her. So it was very hard to cut this friendship off. Well, anyways, fast forward, so her and I are friends, which also wasn't good because she was a very bad influence on me. For example, I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a car. So, of course, I would go pick her up, and her and I would fuck shit up together, aka do bad things. Well, the one night I let her drive, and she ended up going to my ex-boyfriend's house, like for part 2 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, no license, but I had a car, and I let her drive that night, and she went to my ex-boyfriend's house. Now, her and him used to be close whenever him and I were dating, and I didn't think anything of it until she called him, and she kept telling him to come outside of his house so we could fight him. And I'm telling her to stop, but she just keeps laughing the whole time, and she always does shit like this. And I was tired of being pulled into shit like this, because then I got named the psycho stalker girl. So then I find out that after she went home that night, she texted my ex with this whole elaborate story about how I was the one who made her drive to his house and say all that shit. So fast forward, her and I got into it at school because I told a counselor that she was threatening to unalive herself because I was really worried for her. But then she starts posting stuff about my mental health on social media, saying things like, oh, she has zebra stripe arms. And I fought her after that. Because the only reason why I told our counselor is because I gave a shit about her mental health, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, she posted stuff online about my mental health, and then her and I, we ended up fighting at school, and her mom decided to press charges. But then I ended up showing the cops everything that she had said to me online and all the bullying that she was doing, and how she would literally blackmail me into being friends with her. And this made Jenna and Jenna's mom super unhappy, so they ended up filing a false report about me to the police, saying that I have illegal stuff in my house, and I do this, and I do that, and I plan on unaliving my mom. Like, what the? So in the middle of the night, my whole family and I are woken up by this loud banging on our front door. So my mom, hurry up, go open the door, and they're saying that they have a warrant, and come to find out, the only thing that they could find were a bunch of empty vapes, which my mom was not happy about. And yeah, my mom and I's relationship is super rocky sometimes, but I would never try to unalive her.
Storytime about how this girl pretended to be my best friend just to go on vacation with me. So a little background information, I was 14 and a freshman in high school, and we're going to call this girl Sophia. Sophia and I met whenever we were in 6th grade, and we were inseparable. And shortly after her and I had became best friends, my mom thought that it would be nice for us to go on vacation to Hawaii in 2 years. She also said that my brother and I would be able to bring one friend each. So I asked Sophia if she wanted to come to Hawaii in 2 years, and of course she said yes. Keep in mind, I was popular, Sophia was kind of lame, and I'm not even saying that just to be mean, but it's true. So over the next 2 years, her and I are hanging out every day, sneaking out together because we also live like 2 minutes away from each other. And my brother decided that he was going to bring his friend Noah, and I had a crush on Noah, and Sophia knew this, but she would always flirt with him in front of me. I really should have saw this as a red flag, but you know, we love to ignore those. And then out of nowhere, Sophia starts dressing like me and starts getting more popular in school, like for part 2. Part 2 about how this girl pretended to be my best friend just to go on vacation with me. So like I said, she had been flirting with this guy that she knew that I liked, and then she starts dressing like me and getting more popular, which I didn't really care because I was still her best friend. Mainly because she didn't really have any other friends. So fast forward, vacation comes around and we all go to Hawaii. We had the best time ever. And then we come home and I barely hear from her. Like, I was putting in all the effort, texting her every day, and her responses were dry as fuck. And then she had this boyfriend named Brendan, which I guess that could have been the reason why she wasn't talking to me as much. Because, you know, you get into a relationship and all of your focus goes towards that, especially at this age. But the only reason why she started dating him was because he was popular. So they break up and she stopped talking to me altogether. She even blocked me on Instagram. So I asked her what happened, and she said that I was a controlling bitch and she didn't want to be friends with me, which doesn't even make any sense because I've never been controlling to her. And then she started texting me like everything was okay, and this went on for a little bit. But after a few months, I just stopped talking to her, but I definitely felt used. Storytime about my toxic foster family. So a little background information, whenever this all happened, I was 19 years old and I was already out of school, but I had been adopted by a family whenever I was 16 years old, and at this point they had been fostering my brother for about a year. So the only things that they knew about me is whatever my brother told them. Whenever I was 17, my sister ended up passing away, and I went into a really deep depression where I would wake up and go to sleep crying for months on end. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty neglected. Like, my family would get $800 to $1,000 every month for me, and I never saw a dime of that money, let alone we would only go shopping probably once a year for clothes, and I never really got to go out. Well, when I went to them about being depressed, they said that if I didn't feel okay after vacation, they would get me help. Well, they lied because it got worse, and they didn't really care. Everybody was getting paid to do chores except for me, and I literally had so much more to do than everybody else in the house. And then I got a boyfriend, like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic foster family. So like I said, everybody else in the house really had no chores to do, and they would get paid for whatever the hell they did, even if it was like pick up a dime off the floor. Meanwhile, I was like Cinderella, cleaning the whole house, not getting paid for shit, and then I get a boyfriend who was super caring and acknowledged the fact that I was super emotionally and physically beat down. And the worst part is, I just want to throw this in here, my biological brother was literally no help. When I came to him saying that I was depressed, he was like, oh, you're too sensitive. And then he would literally stalk me 24/7, always knew where I was at, always was making my life even harder than it had to be. So the one morning I got up and I just decided to leave. And then after that, for 1 year straight, I got harassed with emails. I would get tailgated on the freeway. And even though I got away from them, I'm still kind of scared that my biological brother will do something. So yeah.
Story time about how I caught my teachers doing the nasty in the girls' bathroom. So a little background information. I was 14 years old and in 9th grade. And we're just gonna get straight into it. So the one day while I was at school, I asked my teacher if I could go to the bathroom. And as I'm walking up towards the bathroom, you know how school bathrooms or any public bathroom in general, like it echoes? Yeah, well, as I got closer to the bathroom, I hear quiet grunting and heavy breathing. But of course, I thought that someone was just going number 2, okay? I did not think anything of this because duh, what else would be happening in a school bathroom? Anyway, so like I said, I walk in not thinking anything of this, and then bam, I see my history and biology teacher doing it in the open stall. The open stall. Like, come on guys, it is bad enough. Y'all are doing this in a public bathroom on school property where there are hundreds of minors walking around, but in the open stall, y'all need to have some class. So obviously when I see them, I like gasp. I'm like, oh, because walking into a school bathroom, that is not what I expect to see, nor do I want to see that. So then Mr. C hurries up, pulls his pants up, and then just sits on the toilet. And then my bio teacher, Miss Annabelle, she turns like bright red and she's trying to cover herself, her whole body with her hands, like girly pop. We already established that this is very immoral / disgusting / downright foul as f***. But you really just have to take all of your clothes off. All of them. Not only that, but Miss Annabelle over here is f***ing married. Like, girl, shame on you. Anyway, so for some reason, the first thing that I thought to say was, I'm gonna tell your husband. Even though I knew I wasn't gonna do shit. But it's literally the only thing that I could think to say in this moment. Well then, Mr. C jumps off the damn toilet, and you guys will never guess what his first thought to do is. Is it to try to de-escalate the situation? No. Is it to try to bribe me? No. Guess again. Run? Never mind, I'm just gonna f***ing tell you. He turns to her and starts crying. Not about the fact that his ass was about to be fired. No. Instead, he's like, do you love me?
Be fucking for real.
She did not seem to give a fuck about him, which go off sis because you need to be more worried about how to post